it's very important to have a smart CPA who works on your side to manage your tax and financial matters. You need someone to represent you to deal with Canada Revenue Agency, banks, financial institutions, or government. You need someone who can keep you updated on recent tax laws, government benefits, and various funding options available to you. At Balbir CPA Advice Center, we work for you to grow your business and build your wealth. We serve our clients all over Canada with our robust cloud tools. Download our iPhone and Android mobile app to get updated information about tax, benefits, and business opportunities. Visit www.cpaadvicecenter.ca or call 888-729-1860. You would love dealing with a modern accounting firm.
Vanakkam, Namaste, Namaskar. Welcome to Sanskruthi, My Culture, My Identity. This show is brought to you by Abhinaya School of Dance, and this episode of Sanskruthi, we will be talking and exploring Tribhang, Odissi. So today we have a guest, Paromita Kaur, who is an Odissi expert, and she's going to talk all about the Odissi. Paromita, please introduce yourself.
Namaskar. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this show. And thank you to Susmita and Soumya and the entire team behind Radio Dishum for putting this together. To introduce myself, well, I grew up as an Odissi dancer, and I'm currently based in Toronto, Canada, where I do Odissi, but I've also branched out and done several other dance forms of the world. And I also did my PhD with a research focus on Odissi, and quite an honor to be here on the show today.
Welcome. My pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
So, who influenced you become an Odissi dancer, especially Odissi dancer? What influenced you, or who influenced you?
Yeah. So dance, actually, I'm not the first dancer in my family. My mother's sister, my aunt, my Mashi, she was actually a state level, national level dancer in India. She actually won the state level title in the All India dance competition for Tripura state in 1982. And so I wasn't the first dancer. I was brought up in New Delhi. So in New Delhi, I studied Kathak first to begin with. And my family moved a lot. So while in early childhood, we moved to the US where I studied ballet and gymnastics. And then we moved back to India. And I was around maybe the age of 9, 10. And that's when Odissi came into my life. So it did have a later start. I was always a dancer, but Odissi in particular came to my life at a slightly later age. And my guru, he is a huge inspiration. I have 2 gurus, and both of them are an inspiration to me. And they both influenced me. And the other thing I just want to quickly mention, we all have this one moment in our lives as dancers, this one moment which crystallizes in our memory as that's the moment when you have the realization that this is
it strikes.
It's exactly
important.
Exactly. Yeah. We all have that one turning point moment. For me, that turning point moment, I loved studying Odissi, and for me, this move to become a professional dancer actually came when I was watching the Kirov Ballet from Russia had come to India. And this is the late 90s. And they did a performance in India Habitat Center. And when the stage opened that night, I will still never forget it. Every aspect, the lighting, the dancing, everything was so beautiful. And it gave me goosebumps. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I couldn't sleep the night after that and the night after that. And somewhere over there, and between going to my Odissi dance classes and hearing my guru speak about Odissi and about the history of 20th century Odissi, somewhere in there, I was in my early teens. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. So it's actually a combination of the personalities in my life, but also this moment of seeing the Kirov ballet on stage, which was the turning point moment.
So, how was the transition from Kathak to Odissi? It would have been pretty difficult, I assume.
Not really, because I had that ballet and gymnastics in the middle, and they wiped my memory from Kathak. So right now, I remember extremely little Kathak, because when children are that young, and this is the other thing, when I was so young when I was doing Kathak, and I moved, so that transition kind of made that transition possible. So when I started Odissi, it was almost like carte blanche. I should say I did have one more experience before Odissi. In Delhi, this is specific to Delhi, there is a very well-known old dance school. It's called Delhi Ballet School, and it's run by someone called Guru Valmiki Banerjee. And he terms this dance form Rabindranatyam, and it gave me a very good base for Odissi. So, and that actually also helped the transition. Yeah.
Wow, it's really interesting. So you said your gurus inspired you to pursue Odissi. So tell us more about your gurus.
So being in Delhi, my first learning of Odissi actually happened in Delhi under Guru Sri Sushant Raut. And unfortunately, after this year, I have to say late Guru Sri Sushant Raut.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah.
We lost him at a very young age due to the coronavirus pandemic. But he was extremely young, and he was a very, very promising and very wonderful guru. He inspired every student that he ever encountered. So he was a very dynamic guru. He was young when he was teaching us. He was a young guru, and his father had also been a very celebrated guru of the Deva Prasad Das tradition of Odissi dance. And eventually, I also learned under his teacher, Guru Sri Durgacharan Ranbir, who is my current Guruji as well. They both inspire me in very different ways, but in ways that I consider very fundamental. Ranbir sir, I have gone to Odisha, and Ranbir sir lives in Odisha in Bhubaneswar. And I've gone to his place. I went under scholarship, so I would go for 2-3 months at a time. And I would stay with Guruji, Guruma. I would stay in their household, and I would learn in the household, learn in a much more immersive way. I would be there 24/7. I would be in the household. So we would wake up very, very early in the morning and have this whole immersive experience. And if we weren't learning, we were teaching our juniors. And so there was always dance 24/7. So Guruji is extremely inspiring and extremely energetic at such a senior age, and he's amazing. He's absolutely incredible, and the wisdom that he imparts, he's incredible. Very like fountain of knowledge.
So you know how exactly the Gurukul works. So since you've stayed with your Guruji and you learned. That's all about the Gurukul system, right? Like very few gets to experience that kind of teaching or the learning from the teachers. It's a great honor to be, to stay with them and learn the art form.
Yeah, and I think we experience the art form differently when we stay there. Yes, it's very different, because then we're not limited to the 1 hour, 2 hour of learning. We're there.
We are there, and we have to learn as per their terms. And they say when to dance, and they decide when to get the break. So nothing works as per our wish and will.
And I think we learn a lot from even watching our gurus interact in their everyday life. And there's a lot of wisdom that's not necessarily taught, but that can be observed and that can be absorbed by being in this space. And I think that's the beauty of the Gurukul tradition.
That's true. Yes. So tell us more about the Odissi art form.
So Odissi, the name indicates it's a dance form from Odisha. Odisha is an eastern coastal state in India, eastern part of India. And it's also a very interesting state because it doesn't cleanly fit into the north or the south. So it's right in the middle, but it's on the east coast. So it takes influences from both the northern Hindustani system as well as the Carnatic system. And it's also a very rich state and it's a very diverse state. So different parts of Odisha are actually quite different. So Odissi is this dance form that comes from the state of Odisha, and it has had multiple influences from the textual influences like the Natya Shastra and Abhinaya Darbana, and also Abhinaya Chandrika, which was written in and produced in Odisha. And also from the specific temple sculptures that were used as inspirations for the poses that we see. So the Tribhang, after which you named this episode today, this is one of the fundamental positions of Odissi dance. And as well as the choka, which is this four-cornered stance that we have that's inspired by the image of Lord Jagannath. And yeah, and so it also has a lot of regional influences as well. So it's Odissi. Okay, to define Odissi, I would say Odissi is a living museum of different movement forms found across Odisha, as well as temple architecture and different architectural and textual sources. It's a museum. It's a living museum.
Should we just take a quick look of a video of the performance? Yes, that was a beautiful performance. So, can you tell us a brief us about this performance?
Thank you. Yeah, so this performance or this genre of performance within Odissi is called Pallavi. So it's not a dance that will tell a story. It's a dance that's based on abstract movements, and it goes from it builds up there. It develops and gets faster near the end. But basically, it's not a storytelling dance. It explores the different forms and movements within Odissi. And this particular one, the bowls you hear are actually my Guruji's voice.
Oh, is it? Okay. So this is something like a nritta piece, how we do
it. It is a nritta piece. Exactly. It is a nritta piece. Exactly. Yeah. Pure dance, as we would call it.
Yes. I've heard about this Gotipuva. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. So how far this influence is there still in the present form of Odissi?
That's a really good question. So the Gotipua dance tradition was actually so Odissi was actually revived in the 1950s. So yes, there were pre-existing dances within Orissa, dances in the temples and several other ritualistic and non-ritualistic dances. But this dance form that we call Odissi today, it actually was recognized as a classical dance form and was given this name back in the 1950s. In 1956, I believe, Sangeet Natak Academy in Delhi recognized Odissi as a dance form. And the Gotipua dance tradition was one of the inspirations because the temple sculptures and the Natya Shastra and Abhinaya Darpana, they give us these images, they give us the poses.
Yes.
But to move from one pose to another, you need a collection of living steps, of actual movements. So one of the traditions that was used for the actual movements between pose to pose was the Gotipua tradition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it continues to be a big influence because it's also a very acrobatic form. So Odissi itself has three different styles. So the style which I study, the style of late Guru Deva Prasad Das Ji, this is also a very acrobatic style of Odissi. It retains this acrobatic character that's inspired by the Gotipua. So that aspect is still there.
Okay.
And yeah, so that several steps even today are quite inspired by Gotipua steps. Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell us about the other two styles
Yes.
of Odissi? Yes.
Yes. So Odissi has three styles. The style of late Guru Kelu Charan Mahapatraji. So this is probably the style that received a lot of global, worldwide recognition because he was very, very well traveled, and his students are everywhere. And it's a beautiful style. This is a very lyrical and beautiful and curvaceous style of Odissi, very sinuous style of Odissi. There's another style, which was the style of late Guru Pankaj Charan Das Ji. And he is known as the Adi Guru of Odissi because he is the senior most or was the senior most guru of Odissi dance. And he was also the guru to the other two gurus.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. And he had a very interesting life, and he was the adopted son of a Mahari or a temple dancer. So he has his own style, which is very, very inspired by and influenced by the temple dance traditions. And then there's the style of late Guru Deva Prasad Das Ji, which my gurus have been trained in. My guru, Guru Shri Durga Charan Ranvi, he's a direct disciple of late Guru Deva Prasad Das Ji. And so this style is very acrobatic, and it is also a little bit more minimalist. And so, yeah, these are some of the characteristics. Yeah.
Interesting. So what makes Abhinaya in Odissi very uniquely lyrical?
I think I'm not sure that it's uniquely lyrical. It's lyrical. It's lyrical. It definitely has its own characteristics. Probably some of the things that set it apart is the choice of texts. I mean, there's definitely a regional influence. So most classical Indian dance forms will have songs in Sanskrit that several classical Indian dance forms will deal with. One of the most common ones is the Ashtapadi series by Jayadev. So these are, and these are, because they're Sanskrit, they are choreographed in many, many different classical dance forms. Yeah. And also, same as other classical dance forms, there will be songs in the regional language. So in Odissi, we have songs for Odissi dance, which are set to Odia language songs, usually by medieval poets, and these are usually devotional songs as well. And so what makes it unique is, I would say, the choice of textual material that's used. So a lot of Odia poetry and a lot of Odia songs and a lot of Odia material, because in Odisha, Bhubaneswar and the surrounding areas, these are known as temple cities. So there are many ancient goddess temples. So that's another very interesting tradition within Odissi dance, is these different textual sources that are used. And so these are some of the things that we recognize Odissi Abhinaya by. Yeah.
So is my understanding correct? the Odissi is filled with more lasya than very less of Tandava or
It's an interesting thought. Right now, as you were saying it, I just have an answer in my head, which I would have never thought of before you asked me this question.
no, because I saw your video and it is
Yes, yeah.
it's very feminine.
Yes.
Even the nritta part is very feminine. So
Mhm.
it just
I
came
will
to mind,
say
it's filled
this.
with lasya.
I'm going to say this. Odissi has a lot of tandav, but the
Okay.
interesting thing is with Odissi dance, it doesn't have many straight lines. Odissi is a non-linear, it's a curvaceous dance form. The circle, the round, the sphere. This is a very interesting shape in Odissi dance.
Okay.
Probably what gives it its graceful flavor is the fact that we don't really make straight lines that much. We do everything in a circle, all of our movements. Like we don't have long extensions. We will always have curved extensions. We will always have rounded movements. So we won't have like a straight hand even out to the side. We won't have a straight arm. So everything is rounded, but we do have a lot of tandav. So especially our style of Odissi, it does have a lot of tandav, but it stays within the round. So it gives it a graceful look, but it does have tandav. Yeah.
So let's just take a quick look of one of your performance. Beautiful, beautiful performance. You just allow me, I'll be watching the whole video.
Thank you so much. One thing I'll say is that when Odissi was revived in the 1950s, the early Abhinayas we had, they were very, very minimalist. So if you noticed in the Abhinaya we just watched, the same line is being repeated several times in the song and it's being danced slightly differently. This did not happen in the Odissi dance pieces that were coming out in the 1950s and 1960s. They were very, the line would be sung one time and it would, just sing the whole song all the way through. And it would just depict exactly what was being said in the song. Nowadays, not nowadays, it started from the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s onward now. There's a new, or the insertion of a mini story within the story.
Yes,
So
like
little
how we do
elaborate things.
Bharatanatyam. We do add sancharis.
Exactly, Sancharis. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, I wasn't aware of this. This is something new. It's interesting. So, okay, talking about the similarity. So, can you just tell me, is there any similarity between the Odissi and the other dance form, like Kuchipudi or Bharatanatyam?
Yeah, I would say several similarities and also several differences. One of the similarities is that they all draw in some way from the Natya Shastra. That's one of the things, and also Abhinay Darpan as well. So these are the texts, the Sanskrit language texts that they all draw from. They a lot of them have some foundation in temple dance traditions as well, and also regional dance traditions as well. So these are some of the similarities. Now, one way in which Odissi is a little closer to the Dakshini forms is we don't stand upright and dance. We have a more grounded stance. Our choka and our tribhanga, these are all bent knee positions. So they are not upright like Kathak is. A lot of Kathak
Yes,
is done
yes,
standing up.
yes.
So the stance is again closer to the Dakshini dance forms than the North Indian forms.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Satriya. I haven't looked into Satriya as much, but definitely a departure from Kathak for sure in terms of its physicality. Even if you look at some of the ornaments, they're not the same, but they correspond. There is a belt, there's the necklace, there's a headpiece. Again, these ornamentations, they're not the same, but they correspond in some ways to some of the Dakshini ornamentation. But one big difference, in Odissi, we wear silver jewelry, we don't wear the golden jewelries. Even though the temple dancers wore golden jewelry because gold is considered the auspicious color, but in Odissi dance, we wear silver jewelry, and we will recognize Odissi with the white headpiece, the
White.
shola phula and tahia. These are characteristic things. So yeah, there's some basic similarities and differences. Yeah.
Shall we just take a quick look of one of your video? I love it.
Yes.
I assume that is about Mahishasura Mardini. Am I right?
It's about Kali. It's from a
Kali.
piece called similar.
Yeah.
It's from a piece called Dasa Mahavidya. Actually, this comes to what we were talking about earlier about Tandav.
I
So
could
this
see that in the
piece,
initial, the footwork, yes.
So this piece is a Tandav piece, but it's set on the Devis, and yeah. So, but it's definitely there it's definitely there, especially in our style of Odissi. It's definitely there in the form. Also, one of the wonderful audiences, one of them actually made an interesting comment that made me think a little bit more. Yes, the headpiece does look like the temple top, and especially the spire that goes up, and also the Maharis, the temple dancers, they had a similar thing called pushpachuda. What we wear is made of shola, which is a white substance. Sometimes it's also made of other more unbreakable materials, but it's made of shola. But the Maharis, they used to wear it made of flowers. It was called pushpachuda. So that's another thing it's trying to do. It's trying to imitate the temple dance tradition in the costuming as well. But just it removes it also in a way. So yeah.
So we spoke about the costume. So walk us through the music.
What is through the music? Odissi has a very interesting music because it's not Dakshini, it's not Hindustani, it's not Karnataka, and it's very confusing, because it has its own system of tals and it has its own system of rags. And there's actually a move in Odisha right now to get Odissi music recognized as the third stream of Indian classical music. So it's distinct, and it can be very interesting because the same tal, the same name of the same tal, there is ek tal in Hindustani classical music and there's ek tali in Odissi.
Okay.
And the two are very, very, very different.
Oh, is it?
Because in Ektali and Odissi I'll just count it, I'll do it very quickly. Dha, ka, thi, na, ka, thi, ni, dha. Ka, thi, na, ka, thi, ni, dha, ka, thi, nak, din, 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 dha, ka, thi, nak, din. This is an Odissi, is Ektali. Now, North Indian ektal actually, which is used in Kathak, has a very, 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 very different sound. It is dhin dhin dhage tirkate thunda katta dhage tirkate dhindada. So it has a very different, it's a completely different tal, but they both have the same name. So and even some of the ragas are like this as well. They may sometimes have similar names or similar sounding names, but the actual sound will be quite different. So Odissi music is its own thing. It has influences of both North Indian classical and the Karnataka classical, but it's quite its own unique identity.
I always thought Odissi is accompanied by Hindustani music. So that was my understanding.
Actually, okay. The instrumentation is closer to Hindustani. For example, the instruments we use are Hindustani. The pakhawaj, which is also used in Hindustani classical, that's our main dance percussion. So the instrumentation is Hindustani, but some of the sounds are not necessarily North Indian classical music sounds.
So when I say Hindustani in terms of rag.
Yes, the Hindustani classical system. Yes, so when I use this adjective, North Indian traditional classical music. Yes. Yeah.
So that was always my understanding, that Odissi dance goes along with the Hindustani music.
No, it's quite, this is okay, when you were asking me way earlier, this was one of the confusions I had when coming out of Kathak into Odissi. Even though I remembered so little of Kathak, I remembered little bits like this Ek Tali thing. So this was, there's a completely different understanding of certain things in Odissi. The instruments are similar to North Indian, but the actual rags and tals, they're their own identity. So so it's quite interesting.
Very, very, very interesting. So you briefed us about the ornaments. Can you talk about the costume, the sari part or the dress part of the?
Yes. So Odissi costume, Odissi sari will be usually either patola silk sari, or it can be cotton as well. We favor something called a temple border, which is a triangular pattern. Yes. And the fabric is either ikat or bomkai, which is another traditional handloom of Odisha. Yeah. So these are the fabrics that are usually used. And again, temple border, everything to do with the temple, even the pushpachura, the temple aesthetic is favored in the
Okay.
costume. Oh, and one more thing. There's two different styles of Odissi sari. You will see the fan on the side for some of them, and you will see the fan in the center for some of them. And you can tell which style of Odissi it is by identifying it with a fan on the side or fan on the center.
Okay.
So the lineage of Odissi that I follow and my teachers perform and teach, our lineage, we follow the center fan pattern.
Is there any particular reason about the fan centered
Oh,
and goes to the side?
I think this was more of a personal aesthetic choice of the founder gurus of this tradition.
Okay.
Yeah. So late Guru Deva Prasad Das ji, he always favored actually wearing the sari instead of the pre-cut costume.
Pre-cut costume. Okay.
Yeah, and since his passing, like it's always been the center fan, and the other two styles we will frequently see the side cut, and they sometimes, rarely though, sometimes you will see the center fan there. So, but most often you will see the side ones. Yeah.
Because these days, especially in Bharatanatyam, they mix the saris. Like you don't see the sari style. They get influence from Kuchipudi dress format. They use that format as a kache format in the Bharatanatyam. There's a lot of style. Like, very few stick to the traditional, the way of the ready dress. Otherwise it's always a proper sari that we tie, but
Right.
lately there is a lot of influence of other classical art form when it comes to dresses and aesthetics and Bharatanatyam. It's interesting information on Bharatanatyam. Thanks for being part of the show. We have to end the show right now. Thanks for coming on this episode and giving us a huge lot of knowledge on Odissi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you as well.
Yes. Sure. And we are going to end the show today. Bye. Good night.